Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my Am reading video for Friday, April 10th, 2020. I'm filming again on Friday in the afternoon. It's ironic, really, because I have so much more time now at home to be filming the night before, but things have been going on. It's been kind of busy. That's my big excuse for not being thrilled with my reading week. But the major things I did this week, I guess, were, well, I had a canceled trip to Israel, and I went down a rabbit hole with the airline about what to do with my plane tickets, and basically came up with sit on your thumbs and wait. And then I'm having some issues with my unemployment claims, and so I'm trying to go down a rabbit hole with a lot of that stuff, and came up with the conclusion of sit on your thumbs and wait. The truth of the matter is that unless things are absolutely dire, people don't have time for you. They cut off your phone calls. You know, don't call. Don't call anybody. If these poor people are swamped. I mean, I feel for anybody who has to go work for an airline or work for unemployment. And of course, so many people who are still out there working. It's scary to be out of work, to, be counting down that it's almost a month since I went into the office, but people are really putting themselves out there. It's a interesting, scary, but also kind of hopeful time in terms of the good that comes out in humanity. I should also say these last couple days I've been going to Zoom Passover Seders. That's another thing that's been taking up a bit of time, but a lot of the clergy at my synagogue, at least, try to focus as much as they can on, all the positive and the getting through this. So anyway, that's this is my weird week in these weird times, the things that take up my time as I'm self-isolating at home. I did finish one book this week, my audiobook of The Queen of Nothing by Holly Black, which is the last in her fairy trilogy, the Folk and Air trilogy. And I feel kind of bad because I went into it last week thinking, no matter what, it's just escapist fun. Don't overthink things, and I don't know if I'm overthinking things, but I was a little disappointed. I'm pretty sure it was a smaller novel than the other two. I wonder if there was something off with telling the story, and maybe the last book got a little big or something. I don't know. That's pretty much pure conjecture on my part, but it was a weird set of circumstances. Like, the last two books came out the very same year, too. Like, and usually they come out at least 1 year apart. That's my knowledge of publishing. But anyway, this was the conclusion of the story that started with the Duarte sisters being whisked away from home and taken to Ferry. Their parents ran away from Ferry, but the protagonist's older sister's father was a fairy who kind of came back to claim them and ended up killing the parents in the process. So they grew up in this land where it's terrifying and they feel powerless, and our main character wants to get some power for herself, and it's, I think, about her sort of going further than any mortal has, and in this case she becomes the Queen of Fairy, which is a pretty big deal, but there's lots of angst and political power plays and emotional rendezvous and romantic rendezvous to get through. So she starts this one having been exiled, and the first thing that kind of disappointed me was that that whole kerfluffle was relatively easily dealt with. I think that's really what it is with this story, is overall it was so much faster and shorter that it just wasn't as developed. There weren't as many hurdles, there weren't as many interesting side characters. I mean, to a certain degree, I get it, it's the end of the series, you want to be wrapping things up more than, introducing a bunch of side plots, but I just wish there was more room for this to grow. It felt like things happened too quickly, like the exile thing, and some characters kind of coming to their final resting spots as they were. Not always death, but, things were getting resolved too quickly, basically, and it was a little bit of a shame for it to go down on that note, even though it was still a fun series overall, and I think that Black did her part with creating a protagonist that I think a lot of teens really would like. I was thinking I'd probably like Jude a lot as a teen. This sort of powerless girl who's sort of angry and wanting to grab a bit for herself. I think that's something a lot of teenagers deal with, really, and also asking questions about when to start really trusting people and taking off your armor, and how to deal with people who've hurt you in the past. I mean, everything about this is like soap opera-ish to the nth degree, but I think that's, you know, how teens often can experience their emotions. It's sort of amped up like that. So it's also fun. It's also very fun. I mean, I wish that Black were more of a world-building type of person, but at the same time, you know, you don't want to get too bogged down in that because it's fun. It's escapist fun. So, yeah, that's, I guess, more or less how I ended. I think there were some really nice, fun things where she hit the mark, but in terms of this one particular installment, it was a little flat, and I wish that she'd been able to flesh it out and give it a better ending. These next two books I'm in the middle of, starting with In the Language of Miracles by Rajia Hassib. This is a family drama book about an Egyptian-American family living in a suburb in New Jersey, and the oldest son is besties with, you know, their neighbor's daughter, and so they're, and the story opens a year after these two characters have died, quite tragically, and Hassib is sort of doling out details, keeping a few things covered up, but it does seem like the narrative seems to be that the son, Hossam, killed both of them, and seems to have anger management issues in his past a little bit. So that's what we're kind of dealing with, on top of the fact that the family is somewhat othered and somewhat of outsiders because they're immigrants from Egypt, or Hossam and the parents were born in Egypt, and then the other kids, the younger kids, were born here. And so she's kind of taking us through this time period in the present where the Bradstreets, which is the girl's family, Natalie's family, they're holding a memorial for Natalie a year after her passing, and there's tension, and there's some sort of xenophobic aunt in the background, but also just, you know, regular tension of these two kids died, and Hossam seems to be pretty much blamed for the whole thing. And so Hossam's family is dancing around the issue and just trying to keep their lives on track, but kind of dealing with it, of course, in different ways, dealing with the death in the community. The two parents are different about it, and then we've been focusing a little on Hossam's brother Khalid as well, and his trying to get on with his life. It's one of those stories. I like these sorts of stories. I like probing characters, especially how they deal with tragedy, especially how they deal with family dynamics, and I'm also intrigued by different cultural issues that come into it, the Egyptian cultural issues, the immigrant cultural issues. But I do think the writing is a little overdone, I think, in a way that I recognize it in my own writing. I think like her sentences are too, there's too many words, there's just too much going on in each of the sentence by sentence construction. I've just been thinking about it a lot because I did a lot of editing recently on my own novella and trying to cut out unnecessary adjectives and adverbs. I have a horrible problem with adverbs. And I feel, I get that sense with this too, like, you know, it's an interesting story, but it's kind of bogged down a little bit by the writing. This is a debut novel, so I still have hope and am interested in her second book, which may or may not be getting to me. I ordered it a couple weeks ago, and I assume it's not going to come out of the warehouse until after COVID-19. I don't know. But for this one, I'm still invested. You know, I'm interested enough in the story. I want to see where it goes, how these characters end up, and see what other details Hassib can tease out about exactly who these teenagers were. So, yeah. But I also wanted to start something new this week because, frankly, I have these weekly videos and I want to keep it all fresh and interesting. So I started this reread of a poetry collection, A Spiritual Life, A Jewish Feminist Journey by Merle Feld. It's actually a mix of poems and just autobiographical narrative, but frankly, I'm just sort of focusing on the poems and giving myself a pass. I don't know, that's what I'm in the mood for. I picked this up because it's National Poetry Month and I want to read some poetry, so I'm going to read the poetry. And so far this is kind of autobiographical, very down-to-earth poetry, I guess. She's not trying to do anything too difficult with the language. It's just very direct and to the point about what she's talking about, which is domestic issues, her children, her husband, some sort of religious matters, but, you know, not in an esoteric way, really. More sort of spiritual, cultural, about Israel and holidays and sort of associations with those. So it's good, it's fine. I guess I probably put too much on this because I remember reading it over a decade ago, and especially during a time when I was trying to overdo my own sort of reconnection to Judaism, which I may or may not still be doing, but as I'm reading this again, I'm like, it's fine, but, you know, it's nothing hugely special either. I don't know, there is the famous poem I read in my book haul video, I think it was, that I haven't gotten to rereading yet, so I'm not actually all even all that far into it, so I could get even more intrigued. I mean, I'm fine, I'm just sort of middle of the road with this. Doing my duty for National Poetry Month. Poetry is not my usual wheelhouse, but gotta give it a go. And finally, next on my docket is Parkland by Dave Cullen. I talked about this most recently in my quarterfinals TBR video for the BookTube prize. So I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail here. The BookTube prize just is a prize put out by booktubers. We all judge it. People who are involved in the community are judging fiction and nonfiction published last year and whittling it down throughout the year to the best books in each division. And for the quarterfinals, I am tasked to read this book, in part this book and 5 others. This one being about the Parkland school shooting, and particularly the aftermath with their involvement in the gun control movement. It's an ebook that I got from the library, and I'm not used to really reading ebooks usually, but I will give it my best go because this is what I have available to me in these times, and I want to finish it before the library snatches it back. So anyway, other than that, I'll leave BookTube prize information down below, and you'll hear back from me on this when the quarterfinal results are announced. So that about covers it for me now. Off to edit and post this, and I have a few chores that I should be getting to outside of this room. And I'm also realizing, being home now, that I can no longer ignore some of the bigger household tasks that I could ignore when I was working all the time. Like I'm having an issue with my dish disposal, and I'm having an issue with my oven. Now I can see if I can possibly get them fixed or worked on. At least look at some YouTube videos, maybe video chat with my dad, and see who out there is still working. I'm not sure exactly what's considered essential or non-essential, or moving around. I've basically been living within a 10-block diameter of my condo for the last several weeks, so oh, what a time. And of course, after all that and amidst all that, I'll be getting to this reading. And I'll be back here sometime within the week because I have a personal reading goal video, a page 112 tag that I'd like to get up and going and fatten my TBR a bit with the books that are already on my shelves. This self-isolation thing has been a good reminder, really, to myself to take pleasure in the collection of books I've already accumulated. So yeah, that about covers it. Happy Easter for everyone celebrating. Hag Sameach, or Happy Passover for my tribe members celebrating Passover with me. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.